actually with a substantial community in the Torres Strait Islands, and I was asked, as a consequence of another project that I was running through the school there, I was asked if I could do something working with parents and their young children. So that's young children prior to school. And I said, well, I can, but what is it that you actually want? And always putting it back to community, right? And being quite mindful of that. And anyway, so after being invited to speak on the radio stations, being driven around the island, passing out flyers, talking to parents and so on, we ended up having close to 30 parents come along to a meeting under the Tree of Wisdom. The Tree of Wisdom is actually two of that large photograph to the right of that. And that is where the meeting place is. And so we started to talk about what is the mathematics that they do in their everyday lives. And it was just extraordinary, the beautiful stories that actually came out. We had collected shells. I gave permission to collect the shells off the beach and certain seed pods so that I could actually use them there. But what was really powerful was that the parents ended up wanting to get up and engage, and they were talking about their dance steps. So where do children learn about angle? Well, in the Torres Strait Islands, all the children had to learn about how to do the traditional dances. So here is a beautiful context within which children can start to learn about angle. Okay? When they're doing when they're creating their music, where do we start to learn about the early stages of algebra? We start to learn about through repeating patterns. It could be an AB pattern initially. We may not call it that with young children, but young children do get that rhythm, and they learn from quite young. And in fact, these children learn about that from around about one year of age. Okay, so within the Yumi Deadly Center, we do a lot, and we have a number of projects. We have three particularly large ones, and they're all framed around mathematics education and improving teachers' pedagogy so that they can actually support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students as well as low SES students with their learning of mathematics, and that's from the early years right through to vet. It is a research centre that's situated within the Faculty of Education, as Alanta said, and what we try and do as much as possible is work with community. So, what do? We try and connect with community. How do we go about that? There are so many processes that we actually have in place, and some of those processes for me now have become intuitive, so I don't have to actually think about them, I just do them. But I want to sort of start with, this is fairly a blunt way to say it, and I hope I don't offend anyone. But when I do go to communities, I am aware of my whiteness. And if you want to read about any studies to do with whiteness, look up Aileen Morton Robinson, as a fantastic academic professor here at QUT. She writes a lot about that. But I am aware of that. And the reason why I'm aware of it is because there are times when I slot into the missionary model. In other words, I'm here to save all of you. And unfortunately, that has been the model that has gone into communities for as long as we as non-Indigenous people have been settled in this country. We try and connect the big ideas of mathematics, so it's not just about learning numbers, geometry, statistics and probability and so on. What are the big ideas informing each of those particular topics in mathematics? And then we work with teachers in sequencing that, rather than leaping here, leaping there, and then there's no connections whatsoever. We try and get teachers to put in a robust sequence, but using the RAM-RA model. So what is the RAM-RA model? This model came out of conversations with Chris Matthews and others. Chris Matthews is an Indigenous scholar at Griffith University here in Brisbane at the Nathan campus. And he and the team argued that in order to support Indigenous students, What we don't need to be doing is leaping straight to the mathematics. So get up on the whiteboard or hand out the worksheets or say, boys and girls, turn to page 16, we're going to do exercises 1 to 5. People at the back, I know why you're at the back because it's for work avoidance, so I'll just get you to do exercises 1 to 2. But the fast finishers down here who are all prepared to go, I'm going to get you to go from 1 to 20 because you're super good, all right? And then, of course, everybody comes back, and it's usually dictated. When classes are brought back, it's usually dictated by the two who are down the back. I'm not deliberately focusing on you people up there, but you know, you pick how classes and think about when you're at uni or at school where you sat. You know, it's all very strategic. So what Chris said was that we need to be starting with reality. Okay, so a nice reality might be what? Where would we see mathematics and if we were working with a group of people? What would be a nice reality? As engineers, what would be a context? But what's really critical here is that we don't leap from that reality straight to the mathematics. We start to abstract. And here is where we start to abstract the mathematics, but we're not using the language and the symbols associated with mathematics yet. We start to abstract and represent that reality in a different way. We can't, I suppose we could, you know, get up and walk to the next tenor, but we can't do that for every maths lesson. So at some point we have to bring it back and represent it in a way in our learning context. And then, of course, it's through here that we support students with making generalisations about that reality. And all the way through this, what we're doing is supporting these young students with understanding that reality a bit more, but listening to what is it they know about their reality, okay? And then, of course, we leap to the mathematics and work with the students on that. So it's moving to that formal. So rather than starting there, we start here. But what is critical here is the reflection. So it's not about, or even if I'm talking to community, it's not about, well, you know, what did you all learn today? Because that's a question that you could get a response like, nothing. Okay, and sometimes you ask that to students and I'll tell you that and it's like, oh gosh, where do I go to from here? What we hope to achieve is a more robust understanding of that reality. But what's really interesting is this is two-way. If we are seriously engaging with culture, we're learning about the context and has been in that reality that started, you know, the learning process. So I've learned about it. The students are learning from me, or the people are learning from me, I'm learning from them. So we're all, in essence, critically reflecting on that reality, so we get a stronger understanding of it. And there's some of the students that I've worked with. So we've got just out at Lake Moondara, as well as in Mount Isa itself. They had to work on a project. It was a large picnic ground out at the lake just below the spillway, and we're working in the context, finding out all about it. So we haven't gone in and said, right, this is what we're going to be building. What we're doing is letting the students engage with what's there, and then also constructing meeting circles and so on there as part of that process. And so in a sense, it's a facilitation. So. And it's two-way. What were they like and what do they see as important to a community meeting place? Probably this is the critical part in all our work that we do. And I know from my experience, I have learned, particularly working in regional and remote, that we work very hard on learning about how people come to know and how they come to be with the world in which they live. And so I'll probably call back to the Torres Strait Islands here, because I went across 6 islands there, and it was quite interesting. And also how they relate with the world. And in a sense, it's very holistic. Doing is learning learning about how people actually relate to the world. And it's been really interesting for me as a personal experience too, because I've actually started to understand my world in a more holistic way. So I'm learning as much as what people are learning from me. What's really important though is the ways that they actually go about things, so whether it be with parenting, and also the whole idea of education and learning. So my view of education and learning before I started doing this kind of work is actually quite different to what it is now. Because education, if we mention the word education, we see school, colleges, universities and TAFE. And education is not just about that. That's just an institution to actually house people where they can come together in an urban, mostly urban environment, particularly universities. But there's a whole lot of education that goes on in the time these children are very young. And what actually happens as part of that process is a lot of learning that occurs. But that learning, that education is transferred to the next generation, so it's transformative. And so the cultural practices that they actually engage in are shared with the next generation.